Hello, my name is Phaedra Michelle Scott, she, her, hers. I'm a multi-hyphenate dramaturg, producer, writer, and I'm currently the producing associate at Audible Theater. The first time I realized I was 100% a dramaturg, I would love to relive that moment. What I remember is that I started off as actually a carpenter. My first professional theater credit is building sets at Delaware Theatre Company. But I realized that I had so much more fun really reading so many of the scripts and then trying to figure out the history of the set through the history of the play. And what I didn't realize was that was actually what dramaturgy was. And it married my two loves of reading and theater and history. And I think that to relive, I would relive that aha moment when I had my first meeting with the playwright, where we were just discussing the play and the light bulb went off in her head and she was like, oh wait, I think I found it. And I realized I was pretty much addicted to that feeling from that moment on. I think I'm 100% a new play development person. So if I could build a theater, it'd be focused on really supporting the artist and the voice of the artist and new plays. I think it's hard to say what three elements, only because it's when I say dramaturgy, that puts together so many different elements. So something that has audience engagement in a really meaningful way. So truthfully engaging with the community in ways that go beyond just post-show conversations or inviting guests into the space, but in a way where the theater company is actually entrenched into the community. I would also say supporting the artist, of course. So really uplifting their voice and helping them tell the best story possible, the most efficient way possible. And I would say the third one would be, how many times can we say yes? Let's say yes, let's keep going. Let's actually open up the door to people of color, queer people with disabilities in an actually meaningful way, not in a way where people put it in their mission statements and then don't really do that much, but in a way where it's oh, look, it's actually beyond just our educational posters that we include people of color and people who look different from, honestly, traditional theaters, which means a homogenous white audience. There was one moment in particular that I want to talk about, which is when I was actually in an audience and I had brought a group of people, a group of brown and black students to go see a play. And I'll never forget this. We were all ready to go see it. We had toured backstage and we were just going to have a good time at the theater. And an audience member, two white women, turned around and talked to me and they said, make sure you keep them quiet during the show. And I will never forget that because at that point, I had been doing post-show conversations at this theater for over a year. I was a pretty familiar face. I was actually in the program of the show that they were seeing. And for my behavior to be policed in that way made me realize, I was this is messed up. The fact that I was invited to this space by this theater company, yet the audience somehow doesn't understand that this space is actually for everyone really broke my heart. But I also felt so paralyzed because I didn't know what to do at that moment, because it was the first time that had ever happened. Here I am with all these students and they're looking to me and we're being told we honestly don't belong there. So at that moment, I honestly couldn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. And that was a few years ago. And now I know I have the knowledge and the tools of how to talk about things like that when it happens and to actually recognize microaggressions. And so something that I'm proud of the person who I've become in that I will speak up for myself in a way that's okay, understand that what that was this, you policing my behavior because I look differently from you and because you already have these preconceived notions about what these black and brown bodies are. And so I would say, honestly, I would never want to relive that moment, but understanding language and being unafraid to use it, which is something that is so difficult to do because I know even thinking about it, it's my body's shaking and my heart, it's when you feel it in your whole body and you're what do I do? What do I do? I know I have to do something, but just kind of leaning into that feeling and just doing it, because that's the only way I'm going to learn how to do it better and more effectively, even though it terrifies me. And to kind of keep empowering other people who are in those same positions, because honestly, my story is like not the only one. It's not the first one. It's not going to be the last one. But like to understand, to like, especially other theater people of color, like, okay, this is the situation that we're in. We can totally talk about it, and we can totally like be like angry about these like old white ladies about this. However, we need to also figure out tools of how to continue moving, because it's like, again, not my job to teach people how to be like less awful people, but I do think there's a responsibility of being able to have the knowledge to like, what's the right word, having the right knowledge to point out these things. My job is not to make sure other people feel like okay, when it's like when they just did something like so egregious that if someone did that to them, that they would probably feel like very similarly to how I am. And so I think it's like there's just like not necessarily a balance, but like I see you, I see what you're doing, and what you're doing is completely incorrect. There was actually an article that was released on Medium not that long ago called How White People Conquered the Nonprofit Industry. And I honestly think that that was like what I felt in that moment, like reading that article. It came out like this weekend. I was just like, wow, yeah, it's like we have all these language, we say all of these things, and yet why are 80-90% of institutions that have diversity in their mission statement run by white people? And that's something that I think about. And that's something that I'm like, okay, I see this, you see this. So what are you actually going to do what you say you're going to do? Because honestly, it has not been happening. And it's like, I'm not going to be someone's like poster child for diversity if I know they're not actually earning it.